Thanks very much, everyone, and good evening. It's amazing to finally be here in Bristol. It has taken actually 3 years to be here in person, so it's really nice to be here tonight. Hello. I'm Naomi. I'm a senior software engineer at Tillo, which is a digital gift card platform based down in Brighton. I've been working with PHP since 2007 for my sins, so this is very much my community. I still love coding and also helping other people to learn. So I thought I'd start tonight by asking you all a question. Now, you don't need to answer this out loud, just have a think about it. What brought you here tonight? By this, no, I don't mean the bus or the train or your bike or a magic carpet. No, I mean, how did you wind up here? What career paths have you taken that have brought you here tonight? When you've thought about this for a minute, ask yourself this very simple question. Why? Why did you choose the path that you chose? Why did you get on that train or bus or bike or magic carpet and come to PHP Southwest tonight? And if you don't get a satisfactory answer the first time, well, guess what? Keep on asking why until you reach a root cause. And by the way, I love hearing about how people get into this industry. The stories are often so wide and varying. So hold on to that story and I'll happily listen to it later. But for now, I'm going to tell you my why. And I'll hazard a guess that I'm probably speaking to people who are or have been or maybe want to be software developers. So I'll assume that you may resonate with this reason for why we do what we do. Because we love it. Yeah, of course, this is not the only reason we do what we do. Of course, this reason is also quite high on the list, but I will come back to this one. And yes, as I'm sure you've probably experienced, it can be somewhat of a love-hate relationship. Yeah, we've all had those days where all we want to do is throw the computer out of the window and never see it again. But somehow something draws us back in. Somehow we get a kick out of being able to solve complex problems with creative application of logic. And out of this comes the observation that because we love it, we care about doing it well. And this is evidenced all over the place, from the existence of user groups such as this one, to the vast numbers of freely available online blogs, tutorials, courses, and of course our amazing tech conferences, which in this industry, unlike others where conferences just exist to sell you the latest and greatest thing, in this industry conferences exist to share knowledge and to help you improve your skills and abilities and learn best practices. And this is all fantastic, but it all happens within our technical world bubble. And in order for these best practices to make it into reality, oftentimes it will be necessary for us to be able to explain the benefits of them in such a way that the non-technical or business world can understand. This is the non-technical why. The goal of any tech business is to use that tech to make a profit, which is why tech business owners will ask, how can tech help me make money, save money, or protect money? In other words, how can tech help me grow my business? And whilst a business may have several answers to these questions from a product perspective, we have lots of answers to these questions from the technical perspective, whether it's the automation of processes or system architectures or site reliability strategies. Following best practices keeps us happy, and because it helps satisfy our developer why. And gathering business support for this is vital, not just for us, but for them too, because it will help them save and protect money that might otherwise be needed on future recruitment costs. And if we want to gather business support for our best practices, well, guess what? We are going to need to talk about them. Because we care, we need to be able to explain best practices in a non-technical way. And this is precisely what I and a group of colleagues were challenged with in a major way at the end of last year when we delivered Tillo's first ever internal tech conference. What started Yay! What started as planning an internal tech conference for the engineering team ultimately became what you see here, an internal tech conference for the entire company, more than 50% of which hold non-technical roles. So the event, of course, presented us with a major challenge in terms of talk content and presentation style, but also an amazing opportunity to build understanding, support, and buy-in for our various different technical best practices. It was all about communication and finding an effective way to convey our topics to our audience, just as in the words of the pragmatic programmer. Just talking isn't enough. So tonight, I'm going to take you through my 3-step approach for presenting a technical subject to a non-technical audience and how I use these 3 steps at our Tillo Tech conference to help explain TDD and convince everyone that a test-first future is what we need. So let's get started. How to explain TDD to a non-technical audience. Step 1 is to help your audience connect with the topic. To do this, we are going to go back to this slide and maybe make use of it as a template. So all we need to do to get started is to change this general tech icon. So let's get rid of that. And now we're just going to replace it with whatever we need to speak about. And for me, that was test-driven development. And now we need to start thinking about how we can answer these questions from the perspective of TDD. So, if the goal of the business is to grow, then what does a growing tech business actually look like? Well, one thing it's more than likely going to mean is more of us, engineers. Yeah. And yes, there's usually at least one wizard amongst us, right? And what does more developers mean? Well, one thing it definitely means is more code. And with more code comes a couple of pretty big needs. Firstly, a need for confidence. As the code base and development team grows, it's no longer to be expected that one developer will have eyes over the entire code base. More likely, multiple developers, potentially in different teams, will have ownership of different areas of the code. And it won't be long before you, as a developer, end up having to work on some code that you're less familiar with. And when you finish your work, you want to be sure that everything over there still works as it did before you came and made some changes. So you need confidence. And the second thing you need is there's a need for continued agility. So as a business faces off against its fast-moving startup competitors, we still need to be able to move that deployment of new features and new product ideas as quickly and as efficiently as we can. And whilst back in the day, it might have been okay for when we had 5 features to go and manually test that they all still work before we release a 6th. As we start building our feature set and it starts reaching for the hundreds and thousands, this model does not work anymore. So there needs to be an alternative. And that alternative, of course, is automated testing. So hopefully by now, we should be starting to gather some business attention as for the reasons why we might start to need some automated testing. And now we can start to connect them with one of the key concepts that TDD helps us with, development flow. Because It's all about going with the flow, moving from left to right with as little friction as possible. I have a feeling I know what you might be thinking. There's a spelling mistake in her slide. How did that manage to make it here? How lazy is Naomi? Did she just put this together at the last minute? Does she even care about this presentation? Should I be cautious of anything else she puts together? Well, of course, actually, I am using a spell checker for my slides right now. You are all my spell checkers. Yep, right now, my slides are being used in production and your end user experience is being affected. And it's causing you to question my abilities to put together a quality presentation and starting to doubt whether you should trust anything I put together. But oh, you mean this spell checker? That little inbuilt tool that checks me as I go? The tool that will save me time and vastly reduce the need for human spell checking? The tool that will ensure quality in my end product? The tool that will give end users confidence in my end product? And most importantly, the tool that will save me the embarrassment of having a spelling mistake in my slide. That's better. So now we are starting to connect our audience with this whole idea of workflow. So with that in mind, I want to take a look at what bad development flow looks like. Oh, I don't actually. I want to make that comparison between a spell checker and software development. So whilst we may use a spell checker, which is essentially a dictionary of words to check our document against, as developers, we can use a suite of automated tests to check our code against. Unlike a dictionary of words, however, it's more like a checklist of features. Once each item on the checklist is checked off, we can be sure or more confident that our code is ready for production. And so, with this in mind, let's now take a look at what bad development flow can look like. We start by writing some code, which we then release to production. But oh no, an unhappy customer. There's a bug in our code. And that right there, that was all of you just now when there was a spelling mistake in my slide. What do we have to do now? Well, firstly, we have to look after that unhappy customer, but also we need to send a request back upstream to ask for that bug to be fixed. And of course, that's going to get in the way of anything else coming downstream. So if this is bad development flow, let's take a look at what good development flow looks like. We start by writing some code, but this time we catch and fix any inadvertent errors whilst we're still in the development phase. We then release our code to production, and at the end of the day, we have a happy customer and a quality product. This quote really hammers home the key business message with regards to development flow. Fail fast and cheap. Fail often. Fail in a way that doesn't kill you. And so, coming back to our initial question about how TDD can help make, save and protect money, we can highlight that in the same way as an automated spell checker can assist us in failing fast, so can a suite of tests help us ensure a faster flow, fewer bugs, and happier customers. Oh, and as a byproduct, happier developers, which also helps protect money. So we've now connected with our audience in terms of why we need automated testing. But now it's time to help engage our audience by demonstrating how TDD helps improve the development flow. Now, when I was originally writing this talk for Tillotech, I was planning it to present to a bunch of software developers. So I was going to throw in some fancy live code demo here, which of course would never have gone wrong. But at the point we opened the gates and invites to the entire company, this had to be changed. No more code. And instead, it was replaced by an interactive demo. There are lots of quotes out there about the benefits and effectiveness of interactive techniques, but I particularly like this one. In my experience, that deeper learning and retention thing is very true. And this was my inspiration. A talk given by this guy, Henrik Knieberg, back in 2017. You may have heard of this guy. He's pretty famous for a couple of YouTube videos that explain agile software development, but he's also the original author of the infamous Spotify model. Anyway, in this particular talk, he got a bunch of volunteers, including his little son, his son there at the end, up on the stage to demonstrate the benefits of limiting work in progress using some Duplo bricks. It's actually pretty cool. So if you get a chance, check this video out. I've also always loved this quote. I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. So at this point, let's stop talking about this and let's just get on and do it. So it's now time to demonstrate how TDD helps improve the development flow. And to do this, I'm going to need the help of some very willing volunteers. So please, everyone, welcome my very willing volunteers to a front. If you'd like to come up and join me. Right, so Dave, you need to be second. So someone needs to come first and then have 3 and 4. Right, okay. So, hello, what's your name?
Mike.
Mike. Mike, you're going to be a developer. Dave, you're also going to be a developer. Stuart, you're going to be, well, you're going to have to channel your inner Wizard of Oz because you're going to become a vending machine.
Okay, thank you.
And
Joe,
you're going to become our very important end user. Okay, so we're now going to demonstrate development flow without tests. So we're going to start demonstrating some development flow without using any tests. Oh, and before we get started, of course, I need to introduce you to our vending machine. Ta-da! We've got our framework. We've bolted on our front end. And now all we need to do is to complete the back-end code. So, Mike, it's your job as a developer to complete the back-end code for our vending machine. So we've got here, if button equals 1, then it's going to be this. If button equals 2, then it's going to be this. And if button equals 3, it's going to be this. So having looked at the front end, we've got ready salted, salt and vinegar, cheese and onion. So if you'd like to complete the code for our vending machine by putting these baskets into, just take the basket. Yeah, about that. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Great. All right. Are you happy? Finish your work? Great. Thank you very much. You can go grab a seat or whatever. Thank you, Mark. Ah, there we go. Well done. So we're now ready to put our vending machine live to our public. So Joe, and also Stuart, vending machine, you're up. So come and take a seat here, vending machine. And I'm just going to fix. So if you'd like to take a seat. Right. Joe, our wonderful vending machine. Number 1, 2, or 3?
Number 3. Right,
so if you vend number 3, just grab one of those packets and just dump it up there. There you go. You can take that. Did you get the crisps you wanted?
Yeah.
Are you happy?
Happy.
Excellent stuff. Great. Everything's going so well so far. Excellent. So it's now been necessary to carry out some maintenance work on our vending machine. And to do this, developer Dave has been dispatched. So, Dave, in order to carry out the maintenance work, you will first need to take out the baskets from the machine. Okay, now let's pretend you've done your work.
Yeah.
And now all you have to do is put the baskets back into the machine again. Great. Dave, are you happy?
Yeah, I'm happy.
Yeah, great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we can, thank you very much, Dave. We can now put our vending machine back live again. And Joe, if you'd like to come and use our vending machine, please.
Already salted.
Number 1, please.
Number 1.
Yeah. Yeah. So dispense what's into number 1. Yeah. That one. There you go. Take what you asked for. Did you get the crisp you asked for?
That's not what I wanted.
It's not?
No.
Oh, no.
But
Are you, how are you feeling about that?
I'm happy.
Oh, dear. Oh, you can, if you want to. Oh, dear. We have an unhappy customer. We've got a bug in our vending machine. We've got a bug in our vending machine. So we're going to have to do something about that. So behind the scenes, we'll have to get a service desk representative involved who's going to have to go and look after our very unhappy customer here. But we're also going to have to dispatch an engineer or developer to come and fix the bug in our vending machine. And Mike, you have been dispatched to come and fix the bug in our vending machine, which of course is going to result in some downtime of the machine. So if you'd like to sort out the baskets again. Happy? Great, thank you very much. So we can now put our vending machine back live again. And Joe, we've convinced you to come back and please try our vending machine again. So 1, 2, or 3.
I'll go for 3.
He's gone for 3.
That's just what I wanted.
Did you? Hey, have we convinced you that our vending machine isn't quite the worst one in the world?
I'm still a bit upset.
So okay, yeah. So we're getting there. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So all have a seat for now. So this is the yeah. So what have I just done there? Right. Okay. So I now want us to just quickly review what we actually just saw, and I'll talk about these as involvement stages. So involvement stage number 1 was Mike doing the initial build of our vending machine. And we've coloured this green because everything was working correctly and going well. Then we had Dave come out and do some maintenance work. And this is where our story starts to go a bit wrong. Oh, dear. So we've coloured this red because at the end of the day, and when Dave left the vending machine, there was a bug in it. So we then had to get a service desk representative involved. Now, nothing they did was wrong, but if the thing wasn't broken in the first place, they wouldn't have had to be involved. And then we had to get Mike to come out and sort the vending machine out and fix the bug. So again, nothing he did was wrong, but we're colouring this red anyway because if the vending machine wasn't broken, that step would never have been needed. And only after all of that can we ask what's next. So this is not a great picture here, right? This is a true example of bad development flow. So guess what? We're going to have another look at this story now. And if someone could reset the vending machine, please, at this point. Just take the baskets out ready for round 2. And while that's happening, we're going to take a look at this story again. But this time, we're going to back our code with tests. So in order to do that, I'm going to need the help of all of you. So before this talk started, you should have been given 1 green and 1 red sheet of paper. The green's got the word pass on it, the red's got the word fail on it. So you're all going to become my very important test runner. And before we get into this, we're going to have a little practice, okay? So you know what you're doing. So I'm going to put a statement up on the screen. If it's true, hold up green. That's a passing test. If it's false, hold up red. That's a failing test. Okay, here we go. Today is Monday. Okay. Someone thinks it's Monday at the back there. Been a long week. Okay, and next test today is Wednesday. Hooray! We've established we just about know what day of the week it is. Brilliant. So you're now all practiced and ready to become our test runners. So you'll play a part as we play out this story again now. So, Mike, you're up. We're going to go back to the vending machine creation. Oh, I'll just turn this around so you're going to complete the code. But before you complete any code, we're going to write our first test. So, don't react yet, okay? As the test runner, you will be activated when Mike gives the command. So, Mike, our first test is it dispenses ready salted crisps when button 1 is pressed. Now, before we do any code, you need to run this test. And in order to run this test, you need to give the test runner the command, run the test. So, when Mike says run the test, I will read this, and after I've read this, you react, okay? Let's give it a go.
Run the test.
It dispenses ready salted crisps when button 1 is pressed. Not bad. So anyway, we have a failing test, and actually this is exactly what we want. So now we need to just write enough code, Mike, just to make that one test pass. And when you've done that, kick the test off again by saying run the test.
Run the test.
It dispenses ready salted crisps when button 1 is pressed. Fantastic, our first passing test. Now we're going to move on to the next one. You need to run this.
Run the test.
It dispenses salt and vinegar crisps when button 2 is pressed. Another failing test, so if you want to make that pass. Okay. And then kick the test off again.
Run the test.
It dispenses salt and vinegar crisps when button 2 is pressed. Hey, and our final test. So
Run the test.
it dispenses cheese and onion crisps when button 3 is pressed. Failing test, make it pass. Kick the test off.
Run the test.
It dispenses cheese and onion crisps when button 3 is pressed. Excellent work. Now, before your work is done, Mike, what we need to do is we need to run the entire test suite just to make sure we haven't inadvertently broken anything along the way. So, test runner, be ready. So, you just need to say run the tests.
Run the tests.
It dispenses ready salted crisps when button 1 is pressed. Hey, it dispenses salt and vinegar crisps when button 2 is pressed. Hey, and it dispenses cheese and onion crisps when button 3 is pressed. Excellent, we have a fully passing test suite. Thank you very much, Mike. We are now ready to put our vending machine live to our public. Thank you very much. So, Stuart, vending machine, please come back to action. And Joe, please come and use our vending machine. 1, 2, or 3?
Okay. 2, please.
2, please, vending machine.
Perfect.
Joe, did you get the crisp you wanted?
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. Are you happy?
Yeah.
Great. Woohoo. Perfect. We have a happy customer. Thank you. To have a seat. Now, we get to a point in our story where we all know it went horribly wrong last time. So, Dave, you've been dispatched to do some maintenance work on our vending machine. Now, what we need you to do is do exactly what you did last time. So, take the baskets out. Okay, pretend you've done the work and now you need to put them back again. Right, now Dave,
Yep.
before you run away,
Yeah, that works.
what we've actually got now, we've actually got a test suite.
Okay.
So, no, you have to run the test suite before you leave, right? Before you leave this situation. So what you need to, we've got to kick off the test runner, you just need to say, run the tests.
Okay. Run the tests, please.
It dispenses, that's very polite, it dispenses ready salted crisps when button 1 is pressed. It dispenses salt and vinegar crisps when button 2 is pressed. It dispenses cheese and onion crisps when button 3 is pressed. Oh dear. We've got a failing test suite, Dave.
Yep.
And what we're going to need you to do is fix up this code so that all these tests pass. And you can use these tests as documentation to help you do that. So where you go? Yeah. Yes. And when you have done that, you can kick off the test again.
Run the test, please.
It dispenses ready salty crisp when button 1 is pressed. Yes, it dispenses salt and vinegar crisp when button 2 is pressed. And it dispenses cheese and onion crisp when button 3 is pressed. Amazing. Thank you very much, Dave, for passing test suite. And now, Joe, please come and try our vending machine. 1, 2, or 3.
2, please. Oh, perfect.
Joe, did you get the crisp you wanted?
Yeah.
Are you happy?
I'm really happy.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And at this point, thank you very much to all of my volunteers and all of you for helping with that demonstration, if you'd all like to go back to this. So we've now engaged our audience, and it's time to help underline their understanding. And now finally we can get to our main goal, which is to have them be able to answer the question, what is test-driven development and why should I care? So in answer to the first part of that question, we can now tell our audience that what they've just done has a name. And that name is test-driven development, or what we will often refer to as TDD. The main premise of test-driven development is that you let the tests drive the development of your code. And this can be explained by what's known as the test-driven development cycle. You start by writing a failing test. Now, this is very important because it proves that the functionality we want to build does not yet exist. We then write just enough code to make that failing test pass. We can now be confident that the functionality that didn't exist before now does exist. And the final stage on this cycle is something we didn't really get too much into in the demonstration, but this stage is for refactoring, which is where you can tidy up your code or re-architecture it somehow. And if at the end of the day your tests still pass, you know that the functionality that you want still exists. So this is what TDD is. And we can now start underlining understandings about why they should care. So firstly, let's see what happened to our involvement stages when we were working with tests. Well, firstly, we had developer 1, Mike, come out and build the vending machine with tests. Green circle, everything was going well. And then Dave came out and he also completed his work correctly because he was able to use the safety net of tests to be able to fix any issues with the functionality before he finished his work. And now we can ask what's next. And that's it. So let's make the comparison then, without tests and with tests. Well, without tests, 3 out of the 4 involvement stages were red, they were friction. And with tests, we had no flow friction. And without tests, or with tests, is 50% fewer involvement stages, both of which are green. And this is our first why you should care moment. Understand that having an automated test suite results in greater efficiency, fewer defects, and happier customers. But now I want to address the elephant in the room. And yes, I know there's actually a yellow elephant here, and I've always wanted a yellow elephant. Anyway, this is mine. I want to address the elephant in the room because your audience might be thinking this. And that is, but TDD takes longer. So your audience may have observed that when working with tests in the vending machine, it was taking a bit longer to actually get round to launching the vending machine. And they also might have come into your talk with some preconceived negative ideas about working with tests and if you're working with tests, things take longer. And I'll come back to that aspect of things a bit later. But let's get into the observation that it takes longer with tests. So here we have some scales. On one side, not working with tests, on the other side, working with tests. So let's think about our involvement stages again. So we had developer 1 come out and do the original maintenance work with the original vending machine build when we weren't working with tests. Let's, for example, say, it took 1 unit of time. And with tests, and before I reveal this, I want to say this is not the de facto. This is just for example purposes, okay? And let's say with tests, it took 1.5 units of time. And then what happened? Well, developer 2 came out and did the maintenance work. Without tests, let's say that was 0.8. And with tests where he had to fix it up, let's say it was 1.1 units of time. So what does our initial developer input look like? Well, with tests is outweighing no tests at this stage. But of course, we know that this is not the end of the story. Oh no, there was more. So on the no test side, there was a bug in the vending machine, which meant we had to involve a service desk representative. Let's say that's another 0.8 units of time. And then another developer to come and fix the vending machine, another 0.8 units of time. And of course, on this side, we also have an unhappy customer. And over here, no more additional involvement and a happy customer. So what has this done to our scales? Suddenly, the no test side is looking rather bad and outweighing the with test side 3.4 to 2.6. And I'd argue that it's actually a lot heavier than this because of this unhappy customer. So here comes our second why you should care moment. Understand that having an automated test suite is an investment that pays off down the line. It's that old adage of you get what you pay for. And now our audience are really starting to see the value of test-driven development, and hopefully they're starting to hope that and want that we are doing this all of the time on all of the things. And it's at this point that we have to remind them that as a developer, you don't just get up one morning and start doing test-driven development. It is a skill that needs to be learned. This is very true. So it's a skill development journey from over here where you never write tests to over there where you're a test-driven development pro and doing it all the time and couldn't work in any other way. And along this timeline, you're likely to experience a range of emotions, more than likely in waves. And when I was doing this talk at Tillotech, I actually took a moment to speak to the developers in the room at this stage. And I'm going to do that now because I'm assuming if, there's probably some developers out there. Because if you're someone who today identifies with maybe being down here on this scale, make it a personal goal over the next 2 to 3 months to maybe take a step this way on the scale. And if you're someone who today identifies with being over there on the scale, make it a personal goal over the next 2 to 3 months to help someone who's down here take that next step. This is how we all make progress together. So how does this journey begin? Well, it usually begins by adding tests after writing the code. Now, before I go any further, doing this is better than not writing tests at all. However, let's take a look at what adding tests after writing code can look like. Remember this? This is our vending machine. Let's pretend you've done the code, but you haven't written any tests yet. What might then happen? We have a conversation between a stakeholder and a developer. Now, if you've got a mixed audience like I did at Tillotech, you could say you'll probably identify with one of these two sides. So there's going to be a conversation. The stakeholder asks, is the vending machine ready yet? And the developer answers, the code is done, I just need to write the tests. Hands up, who's ever said or heard, the code is done, I just need to write the tests? Yeah, I thought as much. So what might happen next? Will it work if we launch it now? Yes. And then what might happen? Well, one thing that might happen is that the tests never get written. It's really easy to go, well, yeah, okay, yeah, we can do that, and I'll get round to writing the test later, and then never write the test, move on to something else and completely forget about it. Another thing that can happen is that tests themselves can start to generate a bit of a negative reputation. So on the stakeholder side, they start to see tests as something that's holding up progress, holding up the release of the vending machine. And this is what I was referring to earlier. If your audience may have come into your talk with preconceived negative ideas, perhaps they've experienced something like this. And then on the developer side, you start to see it as, wait a minute, I've done the work, I've done the code, and now you want me to do tests as well. Is this not doubling my workload? 2 pieces of work? So it can start to feel like twice as much work. Another thing that can happen, if you do actually get round to writing the test, is you may find when you come to write the test that you've architectured your code in such a way that it now makes it difficult to write tests. There might be some tightly coupled code going on that means you're going to have to go back and re-architecture, which means it's going to take longer. And at the end of the day, you might just accidentally forget to write a test for a particular scenario. So you end up with less code coverage, which is the metric that tells us how much of our code is covered by tests. So if this is what adding tests after code can look like, let's remind ourselves what working test first looks like. So writing test first. So you write a test, it fails, you make it pass, you go on to the next one. You write a test, it fails, make it pass, and so on. So this is what writing test first looks like. How does working in this way change this picture? Well, firstly, instead of tests never getting written, they always get written because no code gets written without a test. And instead of feeling like twice as much work, it can and will start to feel like a single practice. You've done the code, it's backed by tests. And instead of it being difficult, you'll likely find it to be less difficult because there's a nice side effect that when you write, you will architecture your code in such a way that it makes it easy to make your tests pass. And this just so happens to be a loosely coupled architecture most of the time. And therefore, there's less backwards and forwards. So instead of it taking longer, it takes less time in that respect. And instead of less code coverage, you of course get greater code coverage because your code is backed by tests. A much better place to be. And hopefully, even despite all of those interruptions, our audience might now be realizing why caring about working tests first is actually important. So understand that working tests first ensures the highest quality and the greatest flow efficiency, but that this requires an investment in skill development. So now, hopefully, we have satisfied our goal, which was to enable our stakeholders to be able to answer what is test-driven development and why should I care? Our audience should now understand that TDD is a development practice where developers drive their code through tests, which then provide proof that the code is doing what we expect it to do. They also understand that TDD helps developers produce better quality code, which means fewer bugs, which means happier customers and happier developers and faster development flow. And importantly, these understandings now lead to the rightful belief that TDD is an investment worth making. And so we've now completed our 3-step guide or 3-step framework on explaining a technical topic to a non-technical audience. Reflecting on it, we first connected with our audience, thinking about what a growing business looks like and the need for confidence and agility, and therefore that need for automated testing. We then made use of that spell checking example to help the audience connect with the concept of development flow and failing fast when it comes to importance of delivering quality and in maintaining happy customers. We then engaged our audience to help explain how test-driven development helps improve the development flow, involving our audience with a hopefully memorable learning opportunity with the interactive activity designed to increase learning and knowledge retention. And then finally, we helped our audience understand our topic and underlined our key messaging, that TDD helps with developer flow and is an investment in quality. And by working in a test-first way, we can get the greatest benefit from flow and quality. At the end of the day, it's all really about communication. The developer why and the stakeholder why might be different, or more than likely will be different. In order to be at our happiest as developers, we need to be able to satisfy our why, and be in an environment where we feel supported and enabled to use best practices. But in order to get there, we need to be able to communicate effectively. This begins with listening to and understanding the business wants, and then being able to explain why a specific technical best practice will help achieve this. Very importantly, within the context of their why. The side effect of this being that if we do this well enough, it will satisfy our why as well. And so I leave you with one of Stephen Covey's 7 habits of highly effective people. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Don't just give them your story about a technical perspective. Don't just give them your story about a technical thing that you love and why you love it from a technical perspective. That's your perspective. Take your time to understand their perspective, their needs and interests, and then explain in their terms how what you love will help solve their problems and ultimately benefit everybody. Thank you.